Well, I see one question. One of the participants would like to know how the validation, the certification process works in practice, and if there's, in order to make sure that the firms are belong to the specific minority group, in this case, the LGBT community, and that the procurement processes are, as inclusive as they're supposed to be. And also, if there are there's any auditing taking place to make sure that the process, the certification process, and the inclusive procurement is working as expected.
Is this? I'm sorry, I had a bit of an issue here somehow. Maybe we're having one in this region. If I understand the question right, it's what sort of safeguards are in place for ensuring that businesses are in fact LGBT.
That's right.
There's an extensive certification process. There is a third-party certification committee that is made up of external stakeholders. It's not NGLCC staff. An applicant must provide a number of different documents that attest to their LGBT status. We call them LGBT status qualifiers. And for example, they could be things like a marriage certificate. Since marriage equality is now legal, given that marriage equality is now legal, you could also have a divorce decree. So those are both ways of doing that. There's also things like a physician carry letter, a legal petition for a name change for a trans business owner. There's a list of about 40 different criteria that have been vetted and determined to be acceptable by our corporate partners that are responsible to their companies for their supplier programs. And then on top of that, we have an additional safeguard, which is known as a site visit. So every single applicant receives a site visit to ensure what they have provided in their application is in fact what a site visitor sees when they attend that place of business, although we're doing those virtually now given COVID, but it's to ensure that everything on the application is what they see when they're looking around those offices. So there are some triggers there you might find, and this is especially prevalent, let's say, for women's certification, where you may show up and the husband's office is the big office, up front, and the woman business owner has a smaller office somewhere else in the office. Same thing could happen with an LGBT business that's 50-50, or you own it with your straight brother or sister or a colleague. You just want to make sure that you're looking for certain things that could be similar to that. And in terms of Latin America right now, very similar to what's been done with We Connect International, which certifies women-owned businesses outside of the U.S. When they first got started, they were done on a self-certifying basis and have been working towards certification. So for some of our affiliates, they've worked towards certification already. Others were in the process of them getting to certification right now.
I would like to add that with all of the vendors, we require some sort of certification. So for minority-owned or women-owned businesses, they go through a nationally recognized certification process. And now that we've added the LGBT-owned enterprises, we require the same sort of requirement where they need to have some sort of certification so that the utilities that do contract with them are not, subjected to potential fraud. And we point all businesses and all companies that want to do business with uncertified or not certified businesses to the NGLCC. So we recognize, the Maryland Public Service Commission recognizes the NGLCC as an actual certifying body on our end as well.
Thank you very much, Casey. We have a second question now, which is a complement to the first. One of our participants is asking, how do privacy concerns come into play, during the certification process? Maybe, certain firms are concerned about how, revealing their LGBT status could affect them personally or their business. I would like to know, what's your view and your experience about that?
Yeah, I think that is a very real concern. Some businesses are worried about that issue, and I think part of it just depends on where, even in this country, that you live. The good news is that all of the members of our certification committee sign a non-disclosure agreement, so they cannot speak about these businesses or their owners externally. They're there to certify that they are the majority owner. That's it. And in terms of access to data, we have a closed database, so it's not open, it's not public facing. The only way to access it is by being a partner of NGLCC, so our corporate partners, our government partners, and there is a level of confidence in the fact that if you are a corporate partner or a government partner through a memorandum of understanding, that you are in fact looking to use that data for positive reasons, and that's to potentially do business with those suppliers. I think like anything in business, there is a potential risk associated, and I would just encourage that every business owner that considers it weighs the pros and the cons. And I think once people realize there are nearly 300 Fortune 500 multinationals and a growing number of state and local governments that want to do business because they're LGBT, it sort of starts to melt away those concerns, but they're always there, and we do everything we can to protect their data.
I would add from the Public Service Commission standpoint, this is kind of the first go round that we have had, but we do recognize that hesitation may be an issue and a concern. So what I've tried to do with this year's hearing, we've actually invited one of our speakers is an individual who has been, it's a very successful businessman, and he, I believe, last year came out. So we have invited him to speak, to one, talk about his experiences both before and now after, but also to set the stage for individuals who possibly have concerns that you can continue to be successful, that there are these options, and there are programs like ours that are inclusive of the community that will allow you to have access to businesses who are looking to do business with you. So I'm hoping that section goes as I believe it will, but we intentionally chose this individual because of his background.
Thank you very much. There's one question that's specifically addressed to Casey. Rafael Ortiz asks, he says, I have the MBE from the state of Maryland instead of the MBE from the NMSDC. Is that still good?
Rafael, so the MBE from the state of Maryland allows you to do business with the state of Maryland as a minority-owned enterprise, and most companies will accept that. What I would say is, depending on where you're trying to get contracts, sometimes there are different certifying bodies that specific locales. So, not sure if you're in PG County or if you're in Baltimore, or, you just want to check with the local county to identify what their qualifications are. But I've seen that the MBE from the state is pretty standard across the board. Just ask the company that you're trying to bid with, or it should be in like RFP requirements, what certification is needed.